I'm very excited. I think this is an amazing conference. I'm thrilled and honored to see all of the minds contributing to thinking about this next system. It's very humbling, but at the same time, it's so inspiring. And I can tell you that as a faculty activist, it does get tiring, it does get disillusioning. And this is precisely the kind of thing that we need to keep us going, right? So I want to introduce our speakers. We have 3 amazing speakers. They're each going to speak for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to have about an hour for debate and discussion. And it's going to be fantastic. I'm very excited about it. We have Emily Kawano, Kashama Sawan, and Gar Alperovitz. I'm going to introduce each one as they're going to go. So our first speaker is Emily. Emily Kawano is an economist and the co-director of Wellspring Cooperative, a nonprofit working to build a network of worker co-ops in low-income communities of Springfield, Massachusetts. Very close to my heart as I study low-income community land trusts. Anyway, she is also the coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and a board member of RIPES, Intercontinental Social Solidarity Economy Network. Please join me in welcoming Emily Kawano.
Thank you. Okay, so we're here to talk about the next system because something about this system is wrong, right? So let's name it. Let's name this system. The dominant economic system that we're living under is capitalism. So it's not really the market economy or market fundamental, this, that, and the other, right? It's capitalism. It's not just markets. It's a whole system, and I'll say a little bit more about that and why we need an alternative. But first, let me just have a show of hands of how many people feel like you're feeling personally anxious about the economic crisis, or do you feel like that's past? How many people feel like there's an economic crisis still? How many people feel like there's an environmental crisis? More. How many people feel like there's a political crisis? Ooh. And how many people feel like there's a social crisis? All right, so lots of crises going on. The thing is that there is a connection between all of these, right? Because we have an economic system that is also completely intertwined with the political system, the social system, and is impacting on the environment. Some people are talking about, a lot of scientists are starting to talk about the 5th extinction, right? So this is like following on after the extinction of the dinosaurs, right? This is the next extinction. That's a level of climate change and ecological destruction that we're talking about. So they're like really big issues that we're facing. We cannot start to address these multiple intersecting crises without really fundamentally changing the system. So we're looking really at something that's post-capitalism, right? And what might that look like? So the thing about crises is that while they're scary and they're daunting and they can be kind of depressing, it's also an opportunity, right? So the last 2 big economic crises led to the overthrow of the old reigning economic paradigm and the rising up of a new one. It was supplanted. So the Great Depression ushered in Keynesian economics, if that means anything to any of you. So, it legitimized the role of the state in stabilizing the economy. It legitimized the role of the state in developing social welfare system and things like that. And then in the late 70s, we had this economic crisis that we call stagflation. So it was simultaneously stagnation, so a recession, and inflation. So that was unusual that they tracked in the same direction. In any case, that really broke the back of the reigning Keynesian model and ushered in what was called at the time Reaganomics, or in the UK it was Thatcherism, or now we call it neoliberalism. So when there's a crisis, especially when we see economic crises, there is an opportunity for change. Some people would say that the crisis of 2008 that economic meltdown is past, and we missed our opportunity. I think that's not true. I think there's still, first of all, there's still a lot of fragilities in the economy. I don't know if you follow some of these big name investors. A lot of them are saying, take your money out of the stock market, hide it under your bed. I mean, things are going to be even worse than 2008. There's a lot of fragility still in the economic system. In addition, there's still a huge loss of faith in the economy, in the dominant model. Really, a lot of people are feeling like this just is failing on so many fronts. So you see it evidenced in people are raising their own chickens, or they're raising their own bees, or they've plowed up their front yards and they're planting kale and making edible gardens. I mean, people are kind of, I don't know how much difference that will make, and I will return to this, but it's an impulse towards self-sufficiency, just in case everything collapses. There's a lot of talk these days about the end of work, right? That there's a huge deficit of jobs. This is not only in the United States, this is going on all over the world. There just are not enough jobs. A lot of that is technologically based. But what does that future look like when there are still some jobs, but there's certainly not enough? What does that look like? So I'm going to talk about solidarity economy, which attempts to address a lot of these strands. So solidarity economy is absolutely about transformation. It is not about reforming capitalism. It is about creating something that supports the welfare of people and planet. It's about not only an economy narrowly defined, the way we do now, but it really does encompass the economy broadly defined. So it means a different political system, one that is more deeply democratic. It means different values, right? Instead of competition and maximizing profits and growth, it means solidarity and cooperation. It means different people. It means a different assumption about who we are as human beings. And so speaking as an economist, right, we have built the dominant economic model on the assumption that we are, how many people know Homo economicus? Economic man. Okay, so this is this character that the economy is really built around. The assumption is Homo economicus is rational, self-calculating, and trying to get the biggest bang for the buck out of the least amount of input, right? Very calculating. There's nothing about community, there's nothing about altruism, there's nothing about love, there's nothing about reciprocity, right? It's all this calculation about how to get the most for yourself. It's very individualistic. So we really need a different actor, because we know that human beings really are not that one-dimensional. So we need changes all along the lines, right? On all those levels. Okay, so now I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about what is a solidarity economy. So solidarity economy is certainly not a fully formed theory that is trying to be imposed upon the world. It's quite the opposite. It's really theory in a lot of ways. It's chasing after practice. So looking for practices that align with values. So it'll look a little different in different parts of the world and different communities. In the United States, in the US Solidarity Economy Network, these are the principles that we use. So solidarity, mutualism, cooperation, et cetera. Equity in all dimensions, race, class, gender, et cetera. Democracy, so deep democracy, not just voting once every 4 years. Sustainability, clear pluralism. By that we mean it's not a one-size-fits-all model, right? We believe there are many paths to the same goal of transforming our system into one that supports people and planet. So, based in values. It's grounded in, or it's embedded in the world or our ecosystem. And the world ecosystem we recognize as being both a natural world, right? Air, land, water, etc., and the socially created world. So it's our culture and language and all that kind of ecosystem as well. And then governance takes that ecosystem, that world and that ecosystem, and through its institutions and through its policies and through its rules and through the way it shapes things, it actually articulates an economic system. Okay, so for example, the kinds of governance that solidarity economy would support would be like participatory budgeting, community-led development, various kinds of collective and community, like the commons approach to governance, for example, where communities govern the natural resources. So governance sort of takes a natural world, shapes it, and creates a solidarity economy that are grounded in those principles. So these, if you look at it's a little askew, but if you look at the spheres, so those are the major economic spheres. So we have production, and there are just, I don't know if you can see it, but there are some examples there. Cooperatives, worker cooperatives, for example, producer cooperatives where, say, farmers come together and they form their own cooperative to market their own goods and process it. I want to say something about DIY and care economy. So this is very important. This gets back to the end of work. Solidarity economy absolutely recognizes the importance and value of non-monetized or non-paid work, right? So everybody here, I'm sure, has engaged in solidarity economy insofar as you've taken care of a sick person, maybe a younger brother or sister, you've volunteered, you do something that really has worth, right? And while the formal economy, the mainstream economy does not really count that work, care work, volunteer work, it's really valuable. And if you had to pay for it, if you had to pay for childcare, if you had to pay for cooking, if you had to pay for cleaning, it's a substantial amount of the GDP. So solidarity economy values that a lot. So when we think about thinking about the end of work, one vision of the future is that, yes, because of many factors, but very largely because of technological shifts, there is not enough work. There aren't enough jobs. But what's the flip side of that? That's kind of scary, but what's the flip side? The flip side is that we've increased productivity to such a great extent that there's not that much work to do, right? And that could be a really good thing if there was a equitable distribution of the work that there is and an equitable distribution of the output, right? So it means potentially we could all work a lot less and have a lot more leisure, and hopefully not just leisure to watch TV, but to do something more fulfilling of all our human capacity. So I was just in Detroit. We had a social solidarity economy forum there. Detroit, as you know, has long been devastated by a lack of jobs. I mean, the automobile industry collapsed and the jobs disappeared. And so there are many communities there that have been suffering with this for a long time. And what's growing up there, right, is very interesting, right? It's not that they're trying to recreate the old economy and recreate the regular job system, but they're figuring out how to do community-based production. They're using, these fab labs and 3D printers and, working at creating their own things in their community, and they're projecting that soon, like, it's going to be possible, I don't know, this is what they say, soon it'll be possible to actually manufacture something as complex as a car locally with these 3D printers. which would be incredible, right? And also, they're talking about the cost of all these things can be driven down incredibly. People are, doing urban agriculture and urban gardening. They're raising their own food. There's a lot of sharing going on. There's a lot of skill shares. People are going ahead and building their own economies that are quite different and really very, very much aligned with solidarity economy. It's about sharing and cooperating and supporting each other and collectively making decisions and collectively managing resources. So it's interesting. So that's production. Quickly, distribution exchange, just a couple of examples. The sharing economy is an example. Wikipedia is a good example of a different way of distributing something, right? It's free, it's freely produced, it's freely shared. Things like community-supported agriculture would be an example. Fair trade, some forms of fair trade, local currencies or social currencies. In terms of consumption and use, various kinds of collective consumption. Community land trusts would be an example. Does everybody know community land trusts?
Yeah.
I see some hands that didn't go up. So just really quickly, a community land trust is where the land is held by the trust. And for example, they are able to build housing on that land trust, and people are able to purchase a house, as one example, for a lot cheaper because they're not buying the land, and also because the land trust is able to leverage other resources. So people get an affordable home, but what it also means is that when they sell it, they can't just go and get whatever the market's going to bear, right? So if the price is doubled, it doesn't mean that you can just sell your house for twice what the market will give you. Because you got a good deal, and the whole idea is to preserve the affordability, there's a formula, right? You can sell it for this much of a markup. Let's see, yeah, so housing cooperatives as well, consumer cooperatives are all examples. In terms of finance and capital, how many people are members of credit unions? Good. So credit unions are cooperatives owned by depositors. So we count them in solidarity economy. Other things like peer lending, crowdfunding, these are all forms of finance that we would embrace as part of solidarity economy. So the big takeaway from this is that solidarity economy is really about changing the whole system. It's not just about building some cooperatives. It's not just about building some alternative currency, all of which is great. But we have to take this substantial foundation that exists of the non-monetized activity and all the other often thriving practices that exist in every single sector of the economy. And we have to bring them together. And if we can bring them together and get them pulling in the same direction for real transformation, we really have something. We don't have to invent these things from scratch. One other thing that I'll say is solidarity economy is a big tent, right? And so we have people who would consider themselves socialists or anarchists or autonomista or just nothingist at all. So some people would sort of reject working with the government, but some people in solidarity economy are right in there and trying to transform government, trying to co-create policy. And personally, I would say that the state, although we do need to seize it back, right, and make it more democratic and make it more a force that works in the interest of the majority of the people. Nonetheless, there's a huge amount of the public sector that are probably keepers, right? Public schools, right? Parks, libraries, some kind of social security system, right? There's lots and lots to build on. So one is that it's a system. We're talking about system change, not just one sector. Two, there's a huge foundation to build on if we can just get these practices sort of out of their silos, recognizing each other as part of the same project of transformation, and working together, and build this movement. So solidarity economy is both a collection of practices that are aligned with the principles, but it's also a movement, right? And this movement is growing all throughout the world. So in the United States, we have this network, US Solidarity Economy Network, but we have counterparts all throughout the world. So there was some mention of REPES. REPES makes sense in Spanish and French. It doesn't make sense in English, but it's the Intercontinental, basically, Social Solidarity Economy Network. It's a network of networks. So on every continent, there are networks, there are solidarity economy networks that then comprise the Intercontinental Network. In addition to that, right, movement, there's also some interesting developments on an international level. The UN, United Nations, has taken up solidarity economy. They have formed a task force around it. So this has helped to legitimize and raise the profile. The International Labor Organization holds an annual Solidarity Economy Academy, an educational event. There are a number of countries that have enshrined solidarity economy in their government departments. So let's see if I can remember them all. Not all of them, but Spain, Portugal, France, Luxembourg, Quebec, Mali, anyway, Brazil, anyway, pretty much across the world, the government either has a department of social solidarity economy, or they have developed national framework legislation. For instance, in Quebec, there's framework legislation that says, that requires the government to support the, I was wondering where my timekeeper was, thank you. To support the social solidarity economy in any way that they can, whether it's procurement or looking at tax policy or looking at policies just to make it easier to form, say, a cooperative. So lots of countries are moving this broad framework legislation that would create a more friendly and supportive environment for the solidarity economy. There are a couple countries that have included solidarity economy in their constitutions. So that's Bolivia and Ecuador. And I want to reflect on something that solidarity economy has embraced that's coming out of that region, in particular Brazil and Ecuador, who have also enshrined in their constitution the notion of buen vivir. So buen vivir, or living well. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to solidarity economy. It's very much informed by indigenous worldviews. It's all about living well, not living the good life and ever more stuff, right? It's about living well. It means living in harmony with people and Mother Earth, right? So solidarity economy has embraced that worldview, and part of that is also respecting the rights of Mother Earth, and which is a very radical thing if you think about it. To say that Mother Earth, that ecosystems actually have standing, have rights. And some places in the United States, there have been successful attempts, or there have been successful efforts to stave off or to stop fracking on this basis, right? That the ecosystem has rights that have to be protected. So I think I'll just wrap up by suggesting that the solidarity economy is not something that you have to wait for. You don't have to wait for the revolution. You can start living it now. It is about changing your mindset. It is about changing your heart. It is about thinking about how you work with other people in solidarity and cooperation and caring and love, as opposed to, probably this isn't something that people in this room are likely to be, but like instead of being ultra competitive and always like the social Darwinist, one-upping each other, right? You can practice this stuff now, along with lots of little things, right? Lots of little things like if you don't belong to a credit union and you have a, I don't know, Bank of America bank account, switch, right? There are lots of little things that you could do. Join a CSA. So you can start being part of this movement right now. And that's it. Thank you.